Why do you want to be president?
I want to be president because this country needs to make an economic U-turn. Because we are upset about this country. We're worried about this country. We're concerned about this country. Because the United States of America is going to be the best place in the world for a child to grow up. I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on that field, and sir, love will win. There's a kind of rugged individualism that has become rugged narcissism in this country. We're living two atomized existences. We need to care for each other more. And face the very painful fact, government of the people, by the people, and for the people is perishing now. This government is now a government of the corporations, by the corporations, and for the corporations.
How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. You're on the East Coast, I hear?
Yes, I'm in Washington, D.C.
You are running for president again.
I am.
How does this campaign look different from the last time you ran?
Well, it's different because there aren't a lot of candidates. Mm-hmm. And I think that people are in a somehow more mature place. There was, among Democratic electorate anyway, there was just a sense of, how do we get rid of Trump? How do we get rid of Trump? How do we get rid of Trump? As though that would fix everything. I think it was a naive but understandable belief that people had that if Trump were defeated, America would somehow go back to what it had been before. People know now that the problems are deeper. And so it feels to me like audiences are more open to a more expanded conversation. That's what feels different.
It was fascinating. I've heard you say quite a few times that you have an intention to bring a moral and spiritual awakening in America. What practical steps do you see in achieving that goal?
First thing you do, you feed hungry children. This idea of incremental change is clearly part of the systemic injustice at this point. Tweak a little bit here, tweak a little there. Last year, everybody was all excited because the Democrats passed the child tax credit, and that did cut child poverty in half. Now, I have two things to say to that. First of all, when they did it, I have to admit, I thought, well, if you could cut it in half, why couldn't you eradicate it? Be that as it may, it was better than nothing, and it did cut child poverty in half. But guess what? 6 months later, when that tax credit expired, they did not bother to permanentize it. So when you ask me what's morality in politics would be people saying, you can't take away that child tax credit. You're taking food out of the mouths of babies. What are we talking about here? There is no moral or ethical consideration that does not include a concern for human suffering. It's not an abstraction, it's very practical. Too many people suffer in this country. We are the richest country in the world. There is too much unnecessary human suffering.
How do you intend on bridging the gap between religious and non-religious perspective in such a diverse society?
I'm not speaking to religious people versus non-religious people. Mm-hmm. That's not what my conversation is. Nobody actually hears my conversation and thinks that I am. I'm speaking to the conscience. I'm speaking to the American in all of us. Even in my work as a writer and as an activist, I don't talk about religious dogma or religious doctrine. I talk about how we should love one another.
How do you respond to concerns about political infringements on Second Amendment rights or the need for self-defense?
I mean, you have all kinds of rights, but with all kinds of rights come responsibilities. Nobody's talking, or at least I'm certainly not talking, about infringing upon the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment says that you have the right to bear arms. And I think that's important, actually. You know, when you talk about common sense gun safety laws, not only do the majority of Republicans as well as Democrats want to see that, so do the majority of gun owners. And that's an important thing to realize about everything we're talking about here. The majority of Republicans as well as Democrats want universal health care. The majority of Republicans as well as Democrats want tuition-free college and tech school. And the majority of Republicans and Democrats, including gun owners, want more common sense gun safety laws.
How do you plan in engaging with communities and local leaders to ensure that solutions are tailored to each community's unique needs?
Well, you know, all across this country, We have the problem solver. We have the people who know what to do, that have to do with helping people rehabilitate their lives, even while incarcerated, who know what to do with people having to do with people rehabilitating their lives after incarceration, who know what to do with early childhood to make sure children don't have that cradle to prison pipeline. The issue is not that we don't have those people. The issue is not even that politicians, whether myself or anyone else, doesn't engage with them during campaigns. That's what a campaign is. You reach out, you talk to people. I spoke at the Union Rescue Mission on Skid Row last week. That's not the problem. The problem is that people in power, the problem is the people who have the solutions don't have the power to the interests whose donations make all the difference in the life of that legislator or president. That's why someone from outside that system, who's not taking corporate money, who isn't even part of that, not even thinking about that, is necessary in America today. And it's why I think that my candidacy matters most.
Absolutely.
I've said before, I feel that regarding the very kind of people that you're talking about, I feel that when I win, I get to open the door and say to people, come on in, guys, we got 4 years. There are a lot of people in this country who really know what to do and have very little power to actually actualize on a large scale the kinds of solutions that America most needs.
In terms of a free higher education, how do you plan to implement that or address concerns regarding the cost of implementing such a program?
Our economy will be much bigger when more people are educated. Our economy will be bigger when more people have health care. So that's the first thing on that. You know, I love how the corporatists talk about wealth creation in any other situation except the country as a whole. So you look at places like Germany, like Australia, you know, it's no different. Right now we have kindergarten through high school. We're just talking about expanding that, just like with Medicare for all. Do what you're already doing, but take it further. So in Australia, I think they have an interesting system. So somebody goes to college, they go as far as their achievement level will take them, okay? Then they get out of college, they start making a living. The government recognizes that when it is that they get to a point where starting to take the money back and paying the money back to the government will not impinge on their quality of life, right? And if you get very, very rich, you're probably going to get to the point where all those bills will be paid back. If you never make that money, that's okay too. The society is better, and the government can see how much money you're making, and it's simply you know, a statistical factoring.
What do you say to the young people that might feel like the odds are against them because this is the world today is all that they know as a result of the leaders from the 20th century?
I would say you're right. The odds are against you. Go to Marianne2024.com and help me get elected, because when I'm there, that's going to turn around. That's what I would say.
You emphasize the importance of support services and community resources in terms of crime prevention. How do you plan on allocating the funding and resources to ensure that these services are accessible to everybody?
Sometimes, and we see this far too often in this country, often federal money is granted in order to achieve poverty amelioration, et cetera, Medicaid, whatever it is, in the states, and too often the state governments will then hoard that money, not disseminate it, not disperse it, or a lot of it anyway, and say we're saving it for a rainy day. So that's why when we really think about the transformations that are necessary in this country, each of us has to we have to begin to see citizenship as simply an aspect of a well-lived, meaningful life. But that can't just mean on a federal level. It also means on a state level. So for people of your generation and anyone who is interested in a fundamental transformation of the way our society works on an economic level, you're going to have to become hip to what's happening in the State House too. It can't just be the federal government, because a lot of the problems, particularly now, ground zero, women's reproductive rights, of course, is an example of this, but there are examples across the board, really have to do with what's happening in the state, on the state level.
What is your perspective about Roe versus Wade being overturned?
The Democrats should have codified it. It's just, it should have been codified, and it could have been codified. Obama had said he was going to codify it. Then he said it wasn't no longer his priority. And the Democrats kept using it as really as a fundraising thing. Oh, you have to elect us. And it's tragic, if Hillary had won, this would not be happening. Trump had a chance to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. We now have a Supreme Court, and not just on the issue of Roe v. Wade, on the issue of other things that have been coming down since then as well, and that could come down in the future. It is a very corporatist court. There is a majority on the Supreme Court now who side, I believe, more with the corporate interests than with the health, safety, and well-being of the American people. I think the Dobbs decision will go down as one of the worst decisions in our history, but right now it is what it is, and we have to do everything that we can on the state level. And then, of course, once you get a Democratic House and Senate back, we must codify, even if that means removing the filibuster.
Right.
Remove the filibuster, and then we can do that. The filibuster is just a relic of an age that none of us should be proud of anyway. You might find it interesting. The situation is so bad. If you look at South Carolina, the Republicans have a super majority, and these are not moderate Republicans we're talking about here. I can't remember if it's 21 or 23 Republican legislators in the state house in South Carolina supported a bill that would say that if a woman had an abortion, she would be executed. Now, 5 women, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and 1 independent pushed back on that. There's this group of incredible women legislators in South Carolina, but interestingly enough, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and 1 independent who are pushing back on those extremist forces. But, that kind of suppression of women's freedom and liberty it's more than extremist. It's worse. That is the danger, that is the risk, that is the peril that stands before us.
And after you win, what is the world going to look like?
I'm not going to have a magic wand. No president has a magic wand. It's not like, the week after I get there, you're going to have universal health care. It's not going to be like that. But this is what my basic message to the American people is. We're a big ship and we're headed for the iceberg. If you vote for a neoliberal corporate Democrat, we're still going to hit the iceberg, just at a different angle. I say we need to turn around now. But it's a big ship, and it has to be turned around wisely and responsibly and carefully. In my 4 years as president, you're not going to say, wow, she turned that ship, it's completely 180 degrees turned around. No, but you would say, she got it around the curve. In 4 years, she got around the curve. Then she hands it over to a millennial or whomever you choose, a younger person at that point, but you'll be on the trajectory. We're not going to hit the iceberg, and this country is going to change. That's what will change. I always say we need a mother in the White House, and you can take that however you want it. What it's going to be when I win is you're going to feel that there is a woman who is sitting in the Oval Office every single day, refusing to bend. Know that your president is taking a stand. None of this mamby-pamby stuff. None of this, I'll help you as long as the insurance companies let me. I'll help you as long as the food companies let me. I'll help you as long as the chemical companies let me, or the big ag lets me, or the pharmaceutical companies let me, or the gun manufacturers let me, or the big oil lets me, or defense contractors let me. I will use the power of the presidency. The Republicans, too often in the modern era, abuse the power of the presidency, but the Democrats are afraid to really use the whole thing, because in the final analysis to the corporatists, corporations, you will not have that with me. That's why you need somebody from outside the system, to whom, I feel as Roosevelt said, because those same forces that would be vehemently coming at me, vehemently came at Roosevelt. And his response was, I welcome their hatred. called them economic royalists. We repudiated them in the age of the New Deal, and we need to repudiate them again. And that's what my presidency would look like. Oh, Mama's mad. Mama's not going to have that. And that you'd feel it and you'd know it. And I hope that you would be feeling, particularly people your age, more and more inspired to take up that baton of power so that when my 4 years is over, you're ready to take it from there.